Everyone to our next talk. I'd love to introduce you to Kat Hardy. And today she's going to be presenting the culmination of her life's work, which is very exciting. So thank you so much for joining us, Kat.
Yay. I'm so excited to be here. All right, I'm going to share my screen with everyone. And we'll get started. Okay. So today, the culmination of my life's work has turned into my theoretical framework, and I call it nervous system modulation therapy, or NSMT. And today specifically, I'm going to talk about the multimodal treatment where I incorporate the Lucia #3 light therapy. So today, what we're going to cover, I'm going to give you a little bit of background information about who I am, what I'm coming from. We're going to review the basic structure and function of the nervous system. I'm going to answer, what is nervous system modulation? So we're going to go over that. And then I'm going to talk about the actual, what it looks like, a treatment session that's this multimodal intervention, share the current ritual method with you, and we'll have some time for discussion and questions. So about me, I graduated. This is kind of a boring slide, so I'll quickly go through it, but I will make this available to everyone. So if people wanted to know, this is sort of my resume. I have a background in Western medicine. I became an occupational therapist in 2008, 2009. I'm published in stroke research. I did a government internship for Maternal and Child Health Bureau into the leadership, education, and neurodevelopmental disabilities. So my background is autism, neonatal intensive care unit, inpatient neurologic rehab, interdisciplinary care. I've also worked in home care and early intervention in schools. I've sort of put myself in lots of different healthcare positions because I really wanted to know what was going on and how we could help. So I left Western medicine and started a private practice in 2016. And that came from really seeing in especially the mental health and chronic pain management where we were really failing. And it was my belief that we needed to treat subconscious material and that talk therapy would be limited with how we could treat the subconscious. So I started a private practice, actually got a minister license because I was laying on hands and it wasn't occupational therapy, which was my original licensure. So I took off into this land of the unknown. And then I found the Lucia light in 2020 and started incorporating that into my practice. So that's my background. That's where I came up with all this. So here's a little diagram to just briefly go over the nervous system. Because in occupational therapy, sensory integration and nervous system modulation, just making sure we're good. I checked the chat real quick. So nervous system modulation, sensory integration is a theoretical framework that we came up with in the 1970s. And that's what we've been using to help treat autism and other disorders. So I've been applying sensory integration to mental health and pretty much all conditions, autoimmune disorders, anything with the nervous system. So here on this is sensory input. Our nervous system is constantly bringing in information, both externally and internally. So we get sound, taste, touch, smell, proprioception, which is where our body is in space. Our vestibular system helps us know if we're moving through space. And then there's afferent nerves that bring this information to the brain via the spinal cord. That's all the sensory input. And then the internal information is like hunger, thirst, pain, all that's being brought to the brain. And then we have conscious and subconscious processing. So conscious processing are our thoughts, our internal dialogue. Then conscious processing also occurs that affects our autonomic functions. So then from the brain, there's efferent neurons that affect motor, that is somatic output. So, we start with our input, then all this cool processing happens and we get output, which is movement. We have conscious movement. Talking is ultimately movement. Our lips and tongue and everything are controlled by muscles. Our eyes moving around, shifting our gaze is controlled by muscles. And then the rest of our body, whatever capacity we have, that's our output. So this is really just the conscious part. All of this is sort of the subconscious material, which is why I was so interested in forging sort of a new way. Sorry, my light turned off 1 second. So anyways, there's the autonomic motor neurons, which control the subconscious. So this is our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nervous systems. So based on the input we're getting, it can affect our nervous system in a way that sends us into fight, flight, or freeze. Or it can send us into the rest and digest mode and safety. And then both of those, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, affect our enteric, which is our gastrointestinal. So if you haven't already heard about this, the enteric nervous system our guts are part of the nervous system. And luckily, psychedelic therapy and medicine has brought that into people's awareness because of knowing that the serotonin is largely, at least like 95% produced in the gut and then taken up to the brain. So all of this, our gut, parasympathetic, all of this is subconscious. So how do we affect that? So hopefully that little visual helps. Next, nervous system modulation. So bringing myself back up. Nervous system modulation is something that's really special and important in occupational therapy. That is our specialty, is realizing how each individual is performing this differently. And out there on social media, you'll see a lot of sort of blanket statements now because of a lot of somatic therapists and somatic experiencing saying, well, do this activity to calm and do this activity to up. But in reality, all of us have different nervous systems, and it's not a one size fits all. Each of us has different registration of input, which means registration is how sensitive we are. So some of us have really sensitive hearing, or some of us might not have sensitive hearing. Then there's reactivity. Some of us might have low registration and low reactivity. So, playing a bunch of loud music affects one person very differently than another. And then what excites one person might be calming to another person. So that's where each of us really has to look into our own nervous system and figure out for ourselves what regulates us if we're low and slow, what down regulates us, what is our resting, do we I'm very fiery and excited, and my nervous system is pretty ready to go all the time. So I tend to need more calming stuff. Whereas some people, if they're really low, slow, they might need more excitatory input. So just realize it's not a blanket, and each of us requires an individualized approach to modulate the nervous system into the state we want to be. So this multisensory processing, that little visual I showed earlier, ultimately is what creates your behavior and your mindset, how all those systems are working. And there's very little operating on the conscious level. So there's a lot going on in that subconscious level that ultimately affects our behavior and mindset. So obviously I feel like most of you are aware, stress, whatever stress might be, it's different for everyone, activates that sympathetic nervous system, which does our fight, flight, or freeze. I consider integration activities to be the ones that regulate the nervous system into the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest mode. And the more that we can be in the parasympathetic mode, the wider our window of tolerance will be for not getting thrown into fight or flight. So that our prefrontal cortex, when we're in fight or flight, our prefrontal cortex, which does empathy, problem solving, higher level cognitive skills, spirituality, that goes offline when we're in fight or flight. So to get our full self to be present, we really need to be in a well-regulated nervous system, parasympathetic, good vagal tone, and then we can actually be us and not our stress responses. So our nervous system can learn to be resilient, but it creates consistency and repetition. So that's why this nervous system modulation is important for all of us to know, is because if we want to learn or be different or inhabit a different nervous system, the changes in our behavior and mindset will come from this neural wiring, from this parasympathetic nervous system state, and from increasing our window of tolerance. So it's okay. We're not going to be just level all the time. We can get thrown out, but resilience is, how do we get back to level? How do we come back to that parasympathetic rest and digest state? And so each of us requires a unique approach, which I spoke about earlier. So you have to figure that out. I can help you, but that's ultimately up to each of us to be sovereign over ourselves. So here's a quote from me to think about for a second. So can we accept that our behavior is less about our personality and more about the function of our nervous system? So just let that resonate, that your behavior is less about your personality and more about the state and the function of your nervous system. Okay, so hopefully everybody's having a good time. I'm enjoying this so far. So now we'll get into the actual multimodal intervention. So current ritual is my private practice. I see people one-on-one. I see people in partner sessions. And I have been doing group ceremony as well, non-substance group ceremony. But today I'm mostly going to focus on sharing my one-on-one individualized treatment. And this is for people who are over 18. I do see pediatric clients, but I do not use the light with them, just because with neural exuberance in childhood and in puberty, there's an increased risk for seizure. So we just do over 18 with the light. I just do the other modalities with my pediatric clients. So the first thing I do when someone walks in, I'm immediately, and this comes from all the years of being in Western medicine and trained as an occupational therapist. As someone walks in, I'm noticing their posture, their gait pattern, how they're holding their body, their dress, how they're presenting themselves. I'm taking in all this information sort of instantaneously. And then I'm checking in with them on how they're doing. I don't do a lot of talking because that's sort of the point, is there's been too much talking and we can't talk our way into a different nervous system. I'm going to say that again. We cannot talk our way into a different nervous system. So I'm big on, let's not talk. Let's get into the hypnagogic state. Let's get into that altered state of consciousness. So I do check in though on mood, sensations in their body, anything that they want to share, to help them feel safe, because safety is the foundation of healing. So the sharing that we do in the beginning is to create that common ground and that rapport, so that they feel safe with me. And of course, the first session is going to be usually more talking. My clients, once they know what's going on and we have rapport, some of them just walk in, lay down, don't say anything. But I do like to know if there's an intention or a goal for the session so that I can hold space for that. And then they lay on the table. So I use a massage table. The client is laying down. I have the home portal over top of them on the stand. And then based on their nervous system state, and this comes from my OT background, if they're coming in really low, the type of music that we choose is to help modulate the nervous system into that, place of resonance. So some clients want more, shamanic drumming, intense music. If they're already coming in regulated and they're ready to go deep. If someone's coming in stressed or anxious, maybe we're going to play some singing bowls or something really light, because we don't want to, agitate or, rile up the nervous system more if we're already there. So the determination of the music comes based off of that whole idea of, where is the nervous system at the beginning? Where are we trying to go? How, and what does that individual need to modulate into the desired state? So we complete the demos as needed. And I'm big on sovereignty. I'm not big on being prescriptive with my clients. I think part of the healing that needs to happen is all of us regaining sovereignty over our choices and knowing that we know what's best for ourselves and connecting with that internal wisdom. So I'm big on my sessions on, what do you think? I give choices. How do you feel? Which one of these resonates with you? Because I want people to become sovereign again. And that's part of what this treatment method does. So as we collaborate, all the sessions are individualized and collaborative. Once we figure out what music we're using for the day, what light program, what intensity, what duration is going to work, then we, set into that and we quiet ourselves. And then while the client is under the light and the music's going, and I give them a choice. Some of them like the ambient music through the speaker. Some people wear headphones, so it's up to that individual. And then my practice before the Lucia light was laying on of hands to treat subconscious material. It's my belief, and it has been for many years, that the consciousness is in the fascia, which is the liquid crystal matrix that's all through the body. And so since 2016, I've been using tissue as a handle into consciousness and doing tissue work to help with the overall state and function of the nervous system, to transmute and release trapped energy and trauma in the body, to reassociate energy that had been disassociated from the body during trauma. So all of this is going on, and this is the multimodal, is me doing this body work while the people are in the hypnagogic state with the lamp. And so I start at the feet, which is a trauma-informed approach, and I work from feet to head for that reason. And my background with the body work, as an occupational therapist, I was doing stroke rehab, traumatic brain injury rehab, orthopedic rehab. So I was trained in neurodevelopmental treatment, proprio-neuro-facilitatory techniques, nerve gliding. And then after I sort of started to want to leave Western medicine, I studied a lot with John Barnes in Arizona, and he's sort of the father, I can call him grandfather now since he's getting older, of myofascial release. So I've studied a lot with him. I also studied with Anat Ben-Yael out in California, and she has the trademark neuro movement, which is the rewiring of the motor and sensory cortex with really subtle cues. And she has her whole Anat Ben-Yael method. So I studied with her. I've studied craniosacral therapy. I'm aware of the Chinese meridians and have worked closely with acupuncturists and collaborate with acupuncturists and share a lot of clients. And then trigger point release. And then I have my level 2 Reiki training in my background. So the individualized laying on of hands that I'm doing is totally intuitive. I'm in flow. I listen to the nervous system. It tells me what to do. I unwind the tissue and treat the areas that come up. I don't decide. But this all comes with that background, heavy in Western medicine and kinesiology and neuroscience, so all of that plays a part. And each session is sort of a mixture of all those interventions. I'm going to pop and look at the chat really quick before we go through. Oh, great. Just people agreeing. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I am too. So that's what I do. And then usually the light is on the table for about half the session, sometimes more. Some people like that far out program and it's on for 50 minutes. Most of my body work sessions are 60 minutes, but I do like to leave some time at the end to remove the light so that I can work on the occiput and cranial bones, and sometimes sinuses, ears, jaw, neck. So, each session's different, but I usually remove the light and then finish up the session without it. Moving along. So this is really cool. I got permission from a client to share her experience. So I'll read this quote. For the past 2 years, I have used the Lucia N 3 light during my myofascial release sessions. These 2 therapies combined have given me a sense of calmness. I have overcome the psychosis that I was diagnosed with, and it has eased my depression. Under the care of my psychiatrist, not me, another practitioner, I have stopped taking Abilify medication. I believe that the Lucia light can be beneficial to everyone who uses it. So this is a client who's worked with me for about 2 years, who was able to be weaned off of her antipsychotic medication. That's what, if you're not familiar, Abilify is an antipsychotic. And basically her symptoms have reduced to the point where her psychiatrist is ready to remove the diagnosis of bipolar schizophrenia, which she was given in 1990. So over this 2-year period, she's been working with me and she's been dedicated. She has invested her time and money because I can't bill insurance. So my private practice is private pay. I do a sliding scale to help out, but she has seen me, I looked up for 111 visits over the past 2 years. But we rewired her nervous system and she was able to get off an antipsychotic medication and have her life back. So I felt like that was a pretty powerful example to share today. So why multimodal? So the example of that, as well as there's another one, I didn't get a quote, but I have another client who came to me with Parkinson's disorder, and he had lost the ability to drive. He was in pain, his posture, and his body, he was getting hunched over, he had tremors, he was having trouble feeding himself. And when he started to work with me and we were incorporating the light and the body work and the neural rewiring, within 3 months, he gained like 3 inches in height, regained the ability to drive, and he's been able to maintain. And he went and moved, he was gone in Texas for the winter, so I didn't see him for like 5 months, and he's back. And he didn't really backtrack that much. He was able to hold the gains that he had made for the most part, other than his pain and a little bit with his posture. But he's seen me now for 3-4 sessions. He's back playing golf. He's back riding his, recumbent bike at home and doing great. And we've basically been able to reverse his Parkinson's symptoms significantly. So why multimodal? Because there is power in combining these therapies. My theoretical, why I incorporated the Lucia light in the first place was because I was like, whoa, this modulates brainwaves. This organizes the nervous system. This drops people into parasympathetic state, which is the safety to rewire the brain, to access the subconscious material. And so for me, the Lucia light was a fast track to make my body work, the laying on of hands, the nervous system therapy that I'm doing, more effective and faster and more efficient within that hour session I have. It's like, let's drop in. Before I had the light, I was leading people through guided visualization, through breath work, doing all these other ways that we can bring that parasympathetic state. But to me, the light is a fast track. It's an efficiency tool, and it helps us get there faster and deeper. So that's why I do the combination therapy, because to access and integrate that subconscious material that's held in the tissue and held in the body, we can combine these therapies to help people. And it happens all the time. I mean, that's why I'm so big. That's why I'm not going to the conference. That's why I'm a mom too. I'm busy doing the work. I haven't done research. I haven't done other stuff because I'm just busy helping people. So now we're going to move in. Part of this combination therapy that I wanted to get into today is psychedelics and how it all fits in. So, and I also want to say, I have a disclaimer at the bottom that this statement is not endorsed or supported by the developers of the Lucia light or any of the affiliates. This is from me, that microdosing psychedelics, specifically psilocybin mushrooms, as part of combination therapy can hasten integration and transmutation of energy due to contributing to the altered states of consciousness and increased neuroplasticity. So I'm going to leave that up for a second. Luckily in Colorado, there was Proposition 122 that passed, and mushrooms and the consumption of them and the personal use of them is legal now. And, I don't want to get into the legislation during this talk, but many of my clients microdose mushrooms before their sessions. So they take it at home 2 hours before they're going to see me. I don't do the administration. I'm not involved. It's their choice. It's their life. They microdose. They come to me. it's active during the session, and the combination of even, a lot of them tell me it's 50 milligrams, 100 milligrams, sub-psychedelic doses. And they come to me when it's active, and between the microdose, the light, and the body work that we're doing, we're getting huge transitions in the nervous system, life-changing transitions in the nervous system. And it's safe, and it's easier to integrate than this macrodose that can be kind of unsettling and all day. And, it's more user-friendly. It's not charging a bunch of money. They're managing it. I'm doing the body work and, providing this like mini ceremony for them. So I'm just going to leave that there. And so what is the role? Honestly, the Lucia light is so powerful on its own. It's a psychedelic experience in and of itself. And then you add, so then it's like, how do we layer? How much do we layer? What is combination therapy? For me, the max combo is the microdose, the body work, and the light. But the light by itself is psychedelic and powerful and healing. So it has value on its own. Body work has value on its own. Psychedelics have value on their own. But I'm big into looking at how do we combine to create the, safest and most beneficial treatments. So current Western medicine research is focused on single person receiving a macrodose, no other therapies. There's no, as far as I know, there's no combination therapy being studied right now. It's just the medicine, meaning the psychedelic macrodoses. Not even a lot of microdosing research is going on right now. The best that I know of is coming out of Jamaica, which I would love to go there and collaborate with them. And then no one is, studying the effects of the Lucia light, to my knowledge, about it being combined with macro or micro sessions. And then I just recently was part of the Aspen Psychedelic Conference, the symposium that happened, and I talked to Dennis McKenna and whoever, all the other presenters that were there, and was trying to get my finger on the pulse of, do you think seizures are more likely when you're in a macro trip, state? And no one really could say, no one could really point out to research to me, but sort of the consensus was, because of people's personal experiences, anecdotal evidence, that we think that during, especially the peak of a macro trip, that you're probably more likely to have a seizure, potentially from the destabilization of the brain from the psychedelic drugs in those high doses. So I would say, for safety, this is all totally anecdotal, stay away from using the Lucia light in a macrodose situation, especially during the peak. Maybe there's benefit from self experimentation, which I have done a ton of since I've been out in no man's land since 2016. Potential benefit of using the light during the come up phase and the come down phase of a macro trip. I could see maybe where that could be a cool way to integrate the Lucia light into that situation. But I'm suggesting that the safest and maybe most beneficial combo might be microdosing with the light. And that's because that microdosing can increase the neuroplasticity, and then combining that with the light can have some really cool effects. But always, use at your own risk, all of these things, live at your own risk. But out in Colorado, I sort of have a higher risk tolerance, I'd say. So now that we've realized that the Lucia light is a psychedelic experience, and a lot of talk, luckily, there's a lot of talk around preparation and integration around psychedelics. And I beg to say that people should be preparing and integrating their Lucia light sessions or any therapy sessions, body work, acupuncture. And so I teach my clients, my method is always giving people homework to prepare and then to integrate the sessions. And so I'm sharing this with you because I would love it. If you're not doing combination therapy, if your offering is the light itself, that's beautiful. Please continue to do that. But you could add support for your clients through this current ritual method that I'm going to share with you today. Because they should really be preparing and integrating the Lucia sessions as if it were a psychedelic experience. So homework, things I give to my clients, as you can read, look at your daily habits, roles, and routines. I teach my clients that repetition and consistency are actually the most potent medicine that we have. There's a saying in neuroscience that neurons that fire together wire together. And that's literally the structure and function of your brain come from the repetition and consistency of what you do every day. And so that's where, in my OT background, the activities of daily living, looking at habits, roles, and routines, that's a huge framework and theoretical basis of occupational therapy. So you can see where, that definitely influences how I'm showing up. Then one of my things that I'll get into later as well is turning your activities of daily living into rituals. I call this sacred self-care. So when people say, I don't have time for mindfulness, I say, do you bathe yourself? Do you get dressed? Do you prepare meals? Do you clean your house? These are all opportunities for mindfulness. These are all opportunities to regulate your nervous system, to become present, to bring in mindfulness, because being in that parasympathetic state is the goal. Building that window of tolerance is the goal. And it's through ritual and intention and attention and being mindful and being present. That's how you wire a well-organized, resilient nervous system. So mindful minutes, if you read that on there, I teach people throughout the day, if you have a high stress job, if you are a mother or a father, mindful minutes are very helpful. That's just where you take 1 minute and you're check in. All right, where's my nervous system? Am I present? Am I ruminating? Am I in the future? Am I in the past? You check in with yourself. And then you feel your body, you ground your feet, you take a deep breath, whatever it is, but just take a minute. Those little check-ins throughout the day can be super helpful, especially if this is the start of your mindfulness journey. And then research, I read this back in maybe 2005. I read a study, one of the first neuroplasticity studies, where it showed that all it took was 10 to 15 minutes a day for at least 30 days to rewire the brain. So they did a study, they did functional MRI, looked at the size of the amygdala, which is the reactivity, anger. It's part of that limbic system that does the fight or flight. And then the prefrontal cortex, which is online when we're in the parasympathetic regulated state. And people who did the 10 to 15 minutes a day of mindfulness had a smaller amygdala and increased cortical wiring in the prefrontal cortex after 30 days. So that's why I've been on this trip since I read that study in 2005. I'm we can rewire brains. I'm going to figure this out. So that's why I say at least 10 to 15 minutes a day. If you say, I don't have that, you're spending 10 to 15 minutes a day brushing your teeth, bathing yourself, dressing yourself. So incorporate it then. Look at your consumption patterns. Food, supplements, drugs, alcohol, art, music, screen time, relationships. All of these things affect our nervous system. All of us need to be honest with ourselves about how our consumption patterns are affecting us and how they will affect us, especially if we're in a preparation or integration specific phase, if we're going to be doing therapy. And then also look at, I remind people, there's so many people who forgot to play. They've forgotten how to play. And play is crucial. Not taking ourselves too seriously is part of healing and is part of attaining new levels of awareness and health and well-being. So I'll ask people when is the last time you laughed? When is the last time you played? And then also looking at your contributions in your social work, civic participation. To me, this is where I'm not big into ego death. I think the ego has a purpose. And to me, the ego's purpose is to be integrated into how we show up in community. And so this is sort of a little bit in order on this slide of the order to look at it in your own life, to become the best person you can be and how to prepare and integrate different therapies. So here's another quoting myself again. We have an opportunity to heal ourselves at the nervous system level through bringing ritual into daily routines. This is sacred self-care. This is sort of one of the main teachings in my private practice. So I have a website, currentritual.com. I made it in 2020, and it is, there's all these apps out now. And I'm a little bit jealous of the apps for their convenience, and people, want them, and apps are easy and they're on your phone. But I created a website for multiple reasons. One is because I wanted to build the website to be compliant with the American with Disabilities Act. In 2020, with the pandemic, all these virtual ADA regulations came out, and this was to help people with disabilities access online healthcare, anything, especially healthcare. So when I was building the website, it was a high priority to me, especially as an occupational therapist, especially as someone who is a huge proponent of having people with disabilities be part of the conversation in all parts of life, but especially in psychedelic therapy, which is highly underserved. Basically, right now, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm getting a little bit on a tangent, but I'm going to say this and then go back. The current system that's being created is to serve able-bodied, wealthy people. And I'm not into that. I'm into having a system that's for all people. And so that's why occupational therapists must become involved in psychedelic medicine, because there needs to be people who can help with transfers, help with toileting. People with disabilities are not going to be able to access psychedelic medicine if only social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists are involved, because their license is not appropriate to help those people. So occupational therapists, I've tried to, get my group involved. They're not ready yet. It's okay. We'll get there eventually. But occupational therapy needs to be involved. We need to create a system that's for all people, and that includes people with disabilities. So that's why I don't have a cool, trendy app. That's why I have currentritual.com, because it is built within the virtual ADA compliance so that it can be for all people. Also, I like the idea of getting off of your phone. It is mobile friendly, the website, but I love the idea of getting off the phone and onto a computer, and maybe even to use the website as a habit replacement for the smartphone addiction. So there's multiple reasons I haven't done the app, and they're expensive. But anyways, so I have currentritual.com. It has 5 pillars. There's audio and video lessons that are available all the time. They cover self-care, mindfulness, sensory exploration, foundational movement patterns, and partner work, which is co-regulation through touch. It's really helpful. It's for everyone, and there's subtitles and all the things and transcripts, so that it's user-friendly as possible. And then there's 3 different learning tracks. Family cohesion has information so that if you're a parent, or if you're parenting, or if you have children in your life, that there is pertinent info on how to bring mindfulness into the home when you have those family dynamics. The self-exploration learning track is for adults only, because we get into sex and psychedelics and that primary relationship, which is with yourself. So there's adult-only content on there. And then Beyond the Diagnosis has specific information for people who are living with a chronic condition, or who might be a caregiver or have somebody they love who has a chronic condition. And the goal is to continue to build this library of content so that we can provide affordable, accessible, holistic health, wellness education to all people everywhere, because this is for everyone. So you're welcome to let your clients know about currentritual.com. It's $98 for an annual subscription. I also have monthly subscriptions, but your clients can do these audio and video lessons to prepare and to integrate the sessions. So then it's user-friendly, it's on their schedule, it's low cost, and then it's there for them all year round. So nervous system health is the basis of all health. And it's 10 to 15 minutes a day to rewire your brain over 30 to 90 days. That consistency and repetition is the medicine. So current ritual, this method is here. This is my gift to the world to try to help everyone the best I know how. And so it's really learning how to turn mundane activities into sacred and drop into that power of ritual. And now I'm going to go into the chat and get into some of the questions. Let's see. Hold on. I want to go up. Whoa, here we go. All right. Can we get a copy to or link to the slides? Yes, I have a PDF that I can send out. If you want a copy of the PowerPoint today, please email me, kat@currentritual.com, and I can email that to you. Let's see. Unable to copy from chat. But yeah, email me, kat@currentritual.com, and I can send you the PDF. I'm subscribed. I love it. Okay. Yes, please. Okay. So there's not really any discussion questions. There's just everybody's like, yes, sweet. So I'm trying to think, Allison, maybe if you want to come back in here and chat a little bit with me, that would be cool. So kat@currentritual.com. I'm going to go back. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Right, great. Yeah, thank you so much, Kat, for sharing all of this. And yeah, a question that I had that came up was, it seems like you don't focus as much on the neural art or visual aspect of the person's experience. How, in terms of at least your procedure, but how do you work with that? And how do you answer clients' questions about when they ask like specific things like, oh, why did I see this color or things like that? Just curious from your perspective.
Oh, yeah. So thank you for bringing that up. So a phenomena that I have witnessed with working with the light for over 3 years is that when I'm working with subconscious material in the body and the energy, builds and unwinds and releases, it affects what they see. And as we work on different parts of the body, like people will say, when you were on this certain part, it was this certain pattern, this color. And then when you moved your hands over here, everything changed. And so that's been a very consistent thing. And what I've started to realize with clients is I'm pretty sure that what you get to see under the Lucia light is in your heart chakra potentially, or like you get to see your internal landscape of your consciousness reflected back to you. And what I've noticed is people who are in a very dysregulated state in their nervous system, or they're highly dissociated, they won't see a lot of colors or patterns. So it's as the nervous system comes into resonance and comes into a regulated state that those visuals become available to people. And people who are highly traumatized, because I work with a lot of PTSD and complex PTSD and people who have had a lot of trauma that they've tended to dissociate. So it's almost like their consciousness is out in their electromagnetic field and not actually in their tissue. Sometimes they'll say, wow, I didn't even see the light. Like when I'm working on their body, it's like they didn't even notice that it was going on, which is wild to me because like I'm sitting there like I'm really sensitive to it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm about to have a seizure. Like turn it off. And they're like, whoa, I didn't even notice it. So it lets me, the light to me is a reflection of how dissociated or present are we actually in our body. And then how regulated or dysregulated is our sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. And then it reflects back whatever subconscious material is being accessed seems to affect what the person sees.
Beautiful response. Yes, I knew there was something there.
Yay. And one caveat that I just, since I have the platform, that is why, so I brought up the dissociative effects of trauma. So my job, I feel like, is bringing people back into their body safely and having them be able to face their trauma and pain in a safe container. And so that is why I have so much question and hesitance about ketamine, because ketamine is not a psychedelic. It is a dissociative anesthetic drug. And I have concerns about if we're going to get short-term benefits for long-term consequences, because I am curious, are we pushing people further out, further out, further out? And is it going to be more difficult for me to bring you back in later? I don't know, but it's a big question of mine.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Yes. Very interesting. We shall see, I suppose. Yeah.
Right, right.
Wonderful. And, I'm wondering too, if there's any light guides out there that would be interested in working with you. Maybe, I know Gillian asked how she could add other modalities or things into her work. Would you be open to offering sessions to Lucia Light practitioners or people who are working with the Lucia Light to help them deepen what they're offering?
Of course. So that's part of the reason I have currentritual.com is because I plan to do more recording and maybe even hire, all of this original content, my like flagship content that's on there. I made all of it. I recorded it. I edited it. I did subtitles. And so for my next iteration of this, I am thinking about having some more training type, stuff on there about this method, this multimodal method. So that could be a way, but if people want to work with me in person, I am in the Glenwood Springs, Carbondale, area. I'm in the Aspen Valley. So if you're local, I would love to work with you in person and have you as a client. But I can also do Zoom sessions. I offer remote one-on-one mentorship and stuff. So again, if people want to know my other offerings or work with me, you can email me at kat@currentritual.com and then we can go from there. And then I am working on, because there's been a lot of questions about mentorship. So I am brainstorming a mentorship program that I hope to launch in the next year or two, where I start training people on this multimodal and this nervous system modulation therapy. But I have a 5-year-old and I've been deep in motherhood. So, but still all the while, becoming an expert and a master at this practice. And so I do feel like in the next year or two, he's going to start kindergarten this fall. So so I'm going to have a little bit more time to be a professional again and less focus on motherhood. But I have enjoyed how much I've given to my son. But now I do think it'll be time to give more to the world, and mentorship and training is definitely on my radar for the future. And there's one more question. Let's see. Do you have any patients who have had pre-dementia or full dementia? Has it helped? Okay. Yes. I have treated people who have had early onset, dementia, where they're starting to lose capacity, memory, they're starting to have more agitation. And I have had success with people coming in for the sessions, and it slows down the progression. So.
Beautiful. Well, wonderful. We're kind of closing up here, but thank you so much for sharing this wealth of insight and all the inspiration from your heart to help people that's led you on this amazing pathway. And yeah, it's so beautiful. I remember, your first Lucia Light session. So great. I had the honor of sharing it with Kat at her house, and she was immediately in the first session like, oh my God, this is working with the fascia. I really think
right. I immediately was like, this is going to be part of my method immediately.
Yeah, that's incredible. But yeah, that's so great. And it's just so beautiful tuning in with you and seeing you on your path. And, it was a really wonderful talk. I'm definitely going to be recommending it to everyone. And as she mentioned, if you want to reach out to her directly, go ahead and contact her. And yeah, I'm sure everything will come in perfect timing in terms of, mentoring and all of that. It's like, it's all divine timing.
Exactly. If I've in a lot of this, and I will share at some point my story of my own, the reason why I am in this work is because of severe trauma background, and I've had to do a lot to actually get into the nervous system that I deserve to be in and to be my authentic self. And so sharing that with the world is huge to me. But what I've learned is surrender, surrender and trust and being present will take you exactly where you need to go.
Beautiful. We'll end on that note. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. All the love and shadow work.
Yes.
Love, light, and shadow work.
So good.
All right. Take care.
Yay. Thanks so much. Bye.